You automate the boring number before you ever see it. Payday hits at 9 a.m. Friday. By 9:01, before you've even opened your banking app, $180 has already left your checking account and landed in your 401k, matched at 4% by your employer, untouched, invisible, growing in a place you don't have to think about to benefit from. Your coworker Kayla spins her monitor around that same morning to show you her new lease, a 2026 BMW X3, $549 a month, nothing down. I just felt like I deserved it, she says. You nod, because you know exactly what that sentence costs to say out loud and exactly what it costs to actually mean it. You make $58,000 a year. So does she. Same hours, same break room coffee, same 3% raise every January. And yet somehow, her decision, a car, a monthly number, a signature on a dotted line, makes it look like she's ahead of you. For a second, in the fluorescent light of the break room, it feels that way. Then you're back at your desk and you open your bank app again. Except this time, you don't close it after checking the balance. You keep scrolling. Savings, $340. The 401k started 18 months ago, sitting at $2,100. You add it up badly in your head, then again on the calculator app, and land on a number just under $2,500. That number sits differently than your paycheck does. Your paycheck is a number that passes through you. It shows up, it leaves, it goes to rent and gas and groceries. This number is what's left after everything else has already taken its share. This is what you actually keep. Her $549 a month buys something worth less every day she drives it. Your $180 a month buys something worth more every day you don't touch it. Nobody spins a monitor around to show off a retirement balance. That's exactly why almost nobody does this. Move 2. You read the statement you've been avoiding. It's been sitting in your email 3 weeks. Subject line going gray with age. Chase Freedom Unlimited. Balance $6,380. APR 23.99%. Minimum payment $159. You built this slowly, the way most people do. A security deposit you didn't have cash for, a root canal in February, a flight home for a cousin's wedding you put on the card because the alternative was not going. None of it felt reckless in the moment. It felt like living. Your neighbor Devin, a paralegal who works nights, mentioned once, leaning against the mailboxes, that he just makes the minimum on his own card and doesn't think about it. It's fine. It's like $150 a month. That's nothing. You nodded politely at the time. Then, on a Sunday night, with cold pasta going untouched beside you, you actually do the math he never did. At 23.99%, paying only the minimum, that $6,380 takes you past 9 years to clear. You'll pay more than $6,900 in interest alone, more than the debt itself, just for the privilege of not thinking about it sooner. Devin's "it's nothing" is actually a 9-year sentence with $6,900 in fees attached. You don't have the credit for a 0% balance transfer. Not yet. So you build a real number instead of an imagined one. $6,380 divided by 18 months is $354 a month. That's not comfortable. That's canceling a subscription. That's brown bagging lunch instead of ordering out. That's saying no to a second wedding you can already feel yourself dreading having to decline. But 18 months at that pace costs you around $1,350 in interest instead of $6,900. You write the number down on a sticky note and put it on your laptop. Not as motivation, just as a fact you don't want to lose again. You set up the auto pay for $354 starting Friday and feel something closer to dread than relief, because that's real money leaving a paycheck that was already tight before you started tracking any of it. Move 3. You build the wall before you need it. 3 weeks into that new payment plan, your car answers a question you didn't ask. The check engine light on your Civic stops blinking and just stays on, solid. 2 days later, it won't start in the parking lot at 5:47 p.m. The lot already half empty, the sky going that flat gray orange it gets in late October. The tow truck driver drops it at a shop off the highway. The diagnosis: alternator plus a serpentine belt that was already living on borrowed time. $612, parts and labor, due before they'll release the car. You have $340 in savings. You had $340 3 weeks ago, too, before you started throwing every spare dollar at the Chase card, and you haven't added to it since because the card felt more urgent. Sitting in the shop's waiting room with a Keurig hissing in the corner, you do the math you should have done a month ago. $612 minus $340 is $272 you don't have. The nearest version of that money is the same credit card you just spent 3 weeks trying to shrink. This is the moment it stops being abstract. All that talk of interest rates and compounding was true, but it was theoretical, a number on a screen you could close. This is a car that won't start and a shop that wants cash before 5. This is the difference between an inconvenience and an emergency, and the only thing standing between those two words is whether the money already exists somewhere with your name on it. You put $272 on the card. It's the only option in the room. Your coworker Bianca once mentioned she keeps 4 months of expenses in a savings account, untouched, boring on purpose, she called it. You'd nodded politely at the time and filed it under things responsible people do. Now walking out with a fixed alternator in a slightly heavier balance on a card you just started paying down, it doesn't sound boring anymore. It sounds like the difference between a bad Tuesday and a bad year. 6 months of your expenses comes out to roughly $12,600, a number so far from your current $340 that it should feel impossible. For a second it does, but you're not building it this week. You're building the first $100 of it this Friday, the same way the credit card autopay became real by just picking a number and setting the date. You start a separate account that same night before you talk yourself out of it and move $50 into it. It isn't the wall yet, it's the first brick. Move 4. You stop confusing your salary with your worth. Monday morning, your manager pulls you into the small conference room with the broken blinds and tells you almost apologetically that this year's raise is 3%, same as last year, same as the year before. $58,000 becomes $59,740. You do the math before you're even back at your desk. After taxes, that's about $40 extra a month, less than what you just started sending to the alternator fund. You sit there staring at your 2 monitors, one slightly dimmer than the other, and something Bianca said weeks ago comes back to you. She'd mentioned almost in passing that she picked up freelance claims documentation work for a small firm, remote, a few hours a week, using the exact same software skills she uses at the office all day. It's not extra work, it's the same work, just not capped by what my manager decides I'm worth. That distinction sits with you longer than the raise did. Your salary has a ceiling built into it, a percentage someone above your manager decides in a budget meeting you'll never sit in. But the actual skill you have doesn't have that ceiling. It only has whatever ceiling you put on it yourself. Move 5. You monetize the skill you already have. That night, you open your laptop, not to check your balance, but to look at freelance platforms. You put together a profile in an hour, list the 2 software systems you know cold, and forget about it for 4 days, until a message comes through from a small independent adjusting firm. 15 files, $22 an hour, remote, evenings only. It's not a lot. Done in the 90 minutes after dinner you used to spend scrolling. It comes out to a few $100s over 2 weeks, but it's money with no ceiling attached. No manager, no 3%. You notice something else you didn't expect. You're faster at the freelance files than you are at your actual desk job, because nobody's watching the clock, because the only thing that matters is the file getting done well. Move 6. You spend once to protect the new income.
Your laptop screen is small, and the freelance software runs slow on it. You're squinting at 10 p.m. trying to compare 2 versions of the same document. You look at a refurbished 27-inch monitor, $189, and hesitate over the purchase for 2 full days before buying it. It's not a treat. It's not the BMW in the parking lot. It's the thing that makes the extra income possible to sustain without wrecking your eyes by Thursday. By the end of the month, between the raise and the freelance files, you've added about $340 to what used to just be a salary, and for the first time, that number came from something your manager never touched. Move 7. You take the asymmetric bet and name your downside first. The freelance work turns into a real offer 6 weeks later. Not more files, a full role at a 4-person startup with no office, building software to automate the exact work you've been doing by hand for 2 years. The founder offers you $52,000, less than you make now, plus 0.75% equity, vesting over 4 years. You slide the offer across the table to Bianca at lunch like it might bite you. She reads it twice. "That's a pay cut," she says, which is the same thing you already knew, the same thing that's kept you up since Tuesday. This is the part nobody explains clearly. An asymmetric bet isn't a guess dressed up as confidence. It's a trade where you can name your downside in advance. Here, the downside is $7,740 a year in lost salary for 4 years if it never vests into anything. That's a number you can survive. It's a bruise, not a break. The upside has no ceiling because equity doesn't work the way a paycheck does. Your 3% raise was capped the moment it was announced. The equity isn't capped by anything except how big the company gets. You type the acceptance email at 11:40 p.m., read it twice, and hit send before you can talk yourself back into safety. Not because you're certain, but because you finally understand that certainty was never actually available to you in the safe job either. That ceiling just hadn't been tested yet. Move 8. You calculate your coast number. You learn a term that night you'd never heard before. Coast, the number where if you stopped contributing entirely tomorrow, compound growth alone would carry you the rest of the way without another dollar from you. At 5 times your annual expenses, that number for you sits around $126,000. You're nowhere near it yet, but for the first time, you can see the shape of a path where equity, not another 3% raise, is what closes that gap in years instead of decades. None of this erases the ground you're standing on, the alternator, the $354 still leaving your account every month for the Chase card. It just changes what you're standing on it for. Move 9. You get term life insurance before you think you need it. 5 months into the new job, you're in the passenger seat on the drive back from a client meeting when your boss's phone lights up on the dash. Her father. She lets it go to voicemail, then exhales in a way that tells you more than the call would have. "He's 70 in March," she says, not really to you. "I still haven't asked him where the will is." You think about your own father, still working, still the guy who changes his own oil and refuses to talk about money with anyone, and you realize you don't know where his will is either. You don't even know if he has one. That night, you look up term life insurance for the first time in your life, not because anything happened, but because for the first time, something depends on you existing. A 20-year term policy, healthy non-smoker, runs about $28 a month, less than the monitor cost you once. You sit with that contrast for a second. $28 a month is the price of making sure a bad day doesn't become a second tragedy for someone who loves you. Move 10. You write the will nobody wants to think about. You open a new tab that same night. A basic will through an online service runs under $200. One afternoon of answering questions about who gets what, who you'd trust with decisions if you couldn't make them yourself. You don't have much yet, no house, no dramatic listing anywhere, but you have a 401k, a growing brokerage account, and equity vesting slowly in the background. Somebody should know what happens to all of it if you're not the one explaining it. Move 11. You ask the question your family has been avoiding. The harder conversation is the one your boss almost had on the highway. You call your dad that Sunday, circling the subject like these conversations always start. He deflects twice. The third time, you just ask directly, "Where's the paperwork? Is there a will? Who's the contact if something happens?" He goes quiet for a second, then tells you it's in the fireproof box in the garage, and something in his voice sounds relieved that you asked before he had to bring it up himself. Nothing about that call felt like winning. It felt like maintenance, the unglamorous kind nobody screenshots. But maintenance is what keeps a fortress standing after it's built. Move 12. You stop needing anyone to notice.
A year later, Kayla's still paying off the X3. Devon's still making the minimum on a balance that's barely moved. You're still driving the same Civic, ticking a little on cold mornings, still eating the same lunch most days, still nobody's idea of impressive from the parking lot. But the 401k contribution that used to feel small has compounded quietly in the background for a year now. The Chase card that once had a 9-year sentence attached to it is gone. The freelance month's income turned into equity in something that might be nothing or might be everything. And either way, you can survive the downside because you did the math before you said yes. The fireproof box in your father's garage isn't a mystery anymore. None of this shows up in a group chat photo. None of it was ever built to. You still check the account most mornings, but the dread doesn't arrive before the app loads anymore. It's just a habit now. The way your boss checks the weather before a drive. Not bracing for bad news, just staying oriented. The equity still hasn't fully vested. Tuesday will still ask something of you that Monday didn't finish paying for. But you're not doing the math to survive anymore. You're doing it because you finally know exactly what you're protecting and exactly why nobody else needs to see it to know it's real. Somewhere tonight, someone is spitting their monitor around to show a coworker a new lease, waiting for the reaction that makes the payment feel worth it. And somewhere 2 desks over, someone else is quietly bumping a contribution percentage nobody will ever ask about, closing a tab nobody will ever screenshot, doing math that won't mean anything to anyone else in the room for years and won't need to.